Hello, fellow warriors. Welcome to a new episode of Divided, Survived, and Thriving, where I get to have candid conversations with badass humans about turning the painful process of divorce or separation into a positive force in your life. I am Laila Aitken Ali, the co-founder of Split.fyi, a divorce resource hub with a supportive community for anyone thinking about going through or coming out of divorce or separation. I have these conversations to teach, inspire, and keep you company wherever you are on your splitting journey. So today we will be talking about how important it is to have that right team of professionals and support around you during your divorce with Rob Roseman. And Rob is a former Las Vegas poker pro, so interesting and intriguing, divorced dad to 3 kids, 10, 8, and 5, and the founder of WTF Divorce, which I love that name. His isolating and overwhelming experience with divorce inspired him to make it a lot easier for other people going through it. So welcome, Rob. It's really good to have you here.
Thank you, Laila. I appreciate it. If only I knew about Split FYI 2 years ago. I feel like nobody knows about this stuff until it's way past the point, but hopefully we can change that and say, look, there's a website, there's a page that you can go to find help.
I know. And in fact, it's interesting that you're saying that, because we say this and we had a little, pre-recording conversation about how important it is to have all these resources, people like you, what we're doing, our endeavor, and just for people to utilize them and make sure that they try that out, because we do it for a reason, because we've been there, done it. We know what those, the potholes are.
Absolutely.
That need to be filled. So
Yes. Yeah. Especially for men. That was a big inspiration for me as I moved into the apartment and we can get into my story, but divorced dads, probably more so than women, we are clueless. So any help we can get and pass along to each other, I think is a great thing for families, for anybody that is divorced.
So, and that's really interesting, because I think by human nature, women tend to have always this built-in community of girlfriends that they talk to and they get advice from. And so they already have that kind of sense of that's what they do. Men find it a little bit harder to connect in that way. They don't know how to ask for help or where to go, right? So to your point, what you're saying, and now I think that's a good segue of let's find out a little bit about your journey and where it started and how it led you here to help so many people.
Yep. So, like you said in my intro, I've had an unusual background. I was a Las Vegas poker pro for 11 years, where I met my wife at the time. We ended up having 3 kids. She had the normal corporate job. I'm going to the Bellagio to play poker at 8 p.m. job. And, it turned into a pretty normal life, actually. We really pulled it off. And then we started having kids. We have 3 kids now, boy, girl, and moved to the Atlanta area for my wife's job. And pretty quickly thereafter, we started to see that maybe we weren't going in the right direction.
Mm-hmm.
And we had a pretty quick, I'd say amicable-ish, I don't know if that's a word, but we did the couples therapy. We did a lot of things that people do when they're trying to explore all avenues. And, next thing you know, at the start of the pandemic of all times, March 2020 to May 2020, we got divorced. And it was a shock to my system, a shock to everybody's system, that my friends, but here we are.
So, I mean, and I'd love to hear when people say it's amicable, right? Or amicable-ish, because that is totally a word in the divorce world, for sure. We can definitely create that. And there are different levels. And even though it is amicable, there is so much emotion involved in it. And there's still the transition, and there's still the due diligence, and there's still, the children. So, I know we talked about this, that it was so hard for you to say, well, I don't know where to start, where to go, who to get help from. But can you share a little bit more about that experience and like, what did you do to rectify that,
Yeah, it was very, you have that adrenaline of like, the papers are signed. I moved out into the new cool apartment, where a bunch of other divorced dads are. But then, after a month, and when your kids go back to their moms and you're sitting on your couch alone and as most men do, we end up on the dating apps. That's actually was my first adventure in divorce life. And I think a lot of men, as opposed to women who have, like you said, have a community, have friends that they say, oh, I'm going to wait, I'm going to talk to my friends. I didn't really feel like I had that. I'm
Right.
relatively new in a city where I didn't know too many guy friends. Those that were married. They don't have time to go out. So it's just this, it was a very isolating experience.
Mhm.
On top of that, the pandemic, you can't even tell. I'm like, what's making me go crazy here? The fact that I'm divorced, the fact that the world is closed. I didn't know which end was up, but I found myself, like a lot of us, online more on Instagram. I ended up on Clubhouse where I met some people like Daniel Harold. He's a dating coach, started Divorced Over 40. And I'd never heard men talk about dating and talk about divorce and open up like that. And for me, it was like better than therapy because it was real. It was people like talking about their story, especially men and women. I mean, it's usually women talking about it, but hearing
Yeah.
from other guys was like, this is like they're giving out, I don't want to say the cheat code, but like they're giving you some kind of support that you're not the only one going through it, which I think um and we'll talk about WTF divorce a little bit later. I think that's got to be one of the biggest problems of a divorce. Even
Yeah.
though the numbers are what, 50%, I could count on one finger, that my friends that were divorced. It's
Right.
very isolating. Every divorce is different, so nobody understood that I actually got along with my ex, but I, like you said, had grief, had awkward transitions, just dropped off the kid's toy bag at the house and walked away. So all of these little interactions that, let's face it, even if you're in a mediocre marriage or a bad marriage even, you're not really experiencing those kind of events. So all of a sudden I'm 43, I'm 45 now.
Mhm.
I felt like I was like going back to school for the first time. I'm like, I don't know how to do any of this.
Right. Completely. In fact, I think, this is one of the things that is, I mean, if it's your first rodeo, let's face it, right? You don't know what you don't know. And you're facing something that is such a overwhelming experience because you have to educate yourself on the process of divorce alone. So that's like the legal, the hard truths of the things that you have to face. And then there are all these little surprises of the emotional side of things. Like you're like, oh my
Mhm.
God, wait a minute. I have to get used to this. I have to get used to not seeing my kids all the time. I have to get used to, asking every single thing to my ex-partner
Right.
for, I mean, every like signature made, or even if the school calls, wait a minute, I have to, call, and all those things which are tedious and arduous. And you're just like, why do I have to face that? Right. So I completely get it. And, normalizing that with other people is extremely important. We can say you're not alone. People say it all the time, you're not alone, other people go
Mhm.
through it. But until you connect with those people, it is really tough, right? It's really tough because you still feel like you're the only one.
Yeah. And even people that have, once we've been through it, usually it works out better. You end up, the animosity goes down. Maybe you meet somebody better. But that sometimes I felt like it was almost dismissive of the fact that that first year or two, no way around it. It's going to be very emotional. It's going to be very uncomfortable. You can't skip that part. And
Mhm.
sometimes I would get annoyed that like everybody's like, oh, you'll meet somebody great or things work out or now you're in a, and I'd roll my eyes like, "Yep, thanks," or the question, a question as simple as, "Hey, how you doing?" would
Yeah.
like a text like that would set me off. So I'm like, clearly there's some
Right.
psychological demons that we need to work through that they kind of just throw you out in the water and say, "All right, you did the hard part, you paid your attorneys, now go figure it out." And that's when I was like, "Oh crap, this is now I don't know what I'm doing."
Right. I find that what's very interesting what you're saying is that we have quite a few men in our community, to my surprise, to be honest, when I started this endeavor. And they say a lot of them say the same thing, where it gets hard because they are able to more compartment. I don't want to generalize because this is not about man versus woman, but they compartmentalize their emotions a little bit more. So when they have to get through a process, they're able to take their emotion out. But when it hits them is when that process is done. And
Hmm.
then all of a sudden, that's what gets hard. Like, what's next?
Yeah,
right? Like, oh
totally.
my God, I've got to face this. So it makes a lot of sense of what you were facing. And, again, it goes back to how important community is, how important it is also to figure out who's out there to help you. And I love what you said. It's like you're talking to a dating coach, everybody's got what they're ready for. Some people need career. Some people need, to figure out what they want to do next in life, and some people really want to figure out like how can they want to date, they want to have some partner, that's important to them. So it's like, what do you need next and who do you need to help you with? Because with that, because what you were saying earlier about friends, asking you how you doing, or it's okay, you're going to find someone. I get that because they mean well, but what they're not realizing is they're not in our boat. They're not in where we're at. So they're coming from a different, they're not getting it, right?
Right.
That's the trigger.
Yeah, and you can't really blame them. I mean, in some ways, I compare it to like not your friend that doesn't have kids talking to you about having kids. It's just like, you don't understand. She
Yeah.
stayed up till 11. Why couldn't you just, take the phone away? Like
Yeah.
questions like that. That I'm
Yeah.
like, you don't get it. But yeah, I think it's just a very that kind of exacerbates it and makes it more isolating. Where you're like, how come nobody gets it? Or as guys, they want to know, the highlight reel. I would say, let me see your dating app. Let's see who you're talking to. And it sounds fun when you send them like a few pictures and you talk about a few dates. But the reality of dating after divorce is a lot of a grind. It can be anxiety inducing. It can be like, I got one day off in the next 2 weeks. Who am I going to go on a date with? Oh, it was a bust, or this one ghosted. It's just like stresses that, let's be honest, you probably haven't dealt with in 20 plus years. Just because you dated in your 20s barely, uh, doesn't mean you have any preparation for what you're about to enter.
Especially in this new
Oh
age
yeah,
of dating.
right. It's
I mean, I would always say, I know I coach people through the divorce process, but I definitely stop at the dating.
yeah, the
That
whole other
that's a
thing.
whole nother avenue, and it's a completely shady ground for me. But so what I'm hearing is some of the things that helped you really get through all of this is definitely the community aspect. And so, finding those other professionals that were, intrinsic and kind of helping you feel less isolated,
Hmm.
more connected and normalized. so,
Yeah.
so
Absolutely. And I think what's hard for men and for women probably is like, you're expecting, I even heard somebody, I was on a podcast recently and she said, a bereaved spouse, if a spouse dies, they get this kind of support. But when somebody's divorced, they don't get that. So all of a sudden you're waiting for your friends to say, oh, let's go have a beer, or let's talk it out. And nobody's really coming for you, especially after the beginning. So now all of a sudden it's on us, this person that's like, where's somebody help me out here? It's on
yeah.
us to initiate and be this awkward, like, hey, Lila, would you like to go, grab a drink and just like talk about divorce? And that's a new experience too. So I think you really have to get out of your comfort zone. And it's unfortunate that there isn't more of a built-in community, but hopefully, what you guys are doing and, groups like Divorce Over 40, they're starting to make that a little more, normalize it, like you said.
Right. No, I mean, that was the key to it. So, really quickly, because this is all about you, but when I was going through it, I was so desperate for community that I joined the only community around to help support divorce was through a church, which I've never attended and never went to. So but I was so desperate to, find other people who are going through it that could help me or support me or get me. Right.
Hmm.
So one of the first thing on my mind was when, I said, we need better resource. We need better community or more community access to community was when, the idea behind Split.fyi. So that was really the catalyst to it is like, people need to connect with other people and really, hear it from other sides. There are so many people should I go? Afraid of
Hmm.
it. What is it going to look like? What is it going to
Mm-hmm.
do? Overthink it. Da da da. It's great to see certain aspects of the divorce of people in different stages, and even out of it. It's listen, it is a transition, but it can be also worth it in the end, right? Especially if you're really unhappy, especially if things don't work. And there's a great, people are very afraid of the children being affected. Well, I'm a child of divorce, and I know so many others, and it really you're as good as how your parents react and
Mm-hmm.
operate through it all, right?
Yeah.
So it's staying cognizant of that. It's like if you're doing what's great for them and you show them by just example that things can be done in a better way, in an amicable way, then they'll be okay.
Absolutely. I mean, that's a big reason why a lot of people leave marriages, is because they don't want to see their kids go through it. Watch this relationship. You hear a lot. Do we wait till the kids are out of college? And what a gift you can give to your kids is show them that, you don't have to tolerate whatever kind of behavior, or you can get into a healthy relationship, because those are the most important years. And like you said before, it's long term is going to be worth it, and short term it's going to be more painful. I don't think many people would disagree with the fact that, like, divorce is worth it. And what do they say? Why is divorce so expensive? Because it's worth it.
Yeah.
But it's very expensive in the beginning, emotionally, all these things that if you're in kind of a rudderless, mediocre marriage, you're almost numb to it. You're not really feeling the waves of divorce. So it's scary, but I think talking to other people that have gone through it, or like you said, thinking about it, that pre-divorce stage, which I didn't even know existed, and I've discovered since that women initiate 70 to 80% of divorces because they have been thinking about it. They have been Googling it. They've probably gone on, Split
Mhm.
FYI to like
For
find
sure.
out about stuff, and men are like just completely blindsided because they just thought, this is just the way things are and it'll be like this forever. And guess what? It's not going to always be like that.
Right. I mean, we're coming out of that era of saying to something, even if you're unhappy, right? Happiness is key. We're moving towards more trying to create a happier life for ourselves,
Hmm.
right? And happiness doesn't mean that you have to stay with your same partner forever. And that's just the bottom line. But we can make it better. We can
Hmm.
make the breakup, the splitting of two people a lot easier and better, right? And
Oh
I
yeah.
think that individual support is huge and important. And that kind of leads me to this, the next thing of like what you have started, by the way. And I have to have a shout out to, I love, your social media posts. They make me laugh. I enjoy always seeing them. So, if people are not following, who are listening, you need to follow WTF Divorce, because it is super, like, it's a great injection of some laughter. And, you capture exactly the feelings that someone goes through when they're going through divorce. So that's a shout out. But explain a little bit about why you've put now your new passion into this and endeavor.
And thank you. That means a lot. I feel like I'm finally getting to use my calling as like a comedy writer by writing memes about divorce, because I'm like, yeah, I mean, I've always said, if you can't laugh about this stuff, good luck. Because I mean,
Totally.
half the time when I was dating or you're going through a divorce, is anybody seeing this? This is insanity. And, I think people that have gone through it or going through it can relate to that, moment when your co-parent sends that text. Or we had a meme hit like 57 million views on Instagram, and it was when you're swiping on Bumble and you see your ex and the kid's reaction. And I'm like, anybody that has been on a dating app knows that, like, mortifying feeling of seeing your ex on a dating app and just like your heart stopping and your brain stopping. So I think,
I
like you
agree.
said, there's what I wanted to do was share this incredible content from all these experts, because I'm not an expert. I'm just a dad going through it.
Mhm.
And, you know, especially when you're on platforms like Instagram, you're there a lot of times to learn, but you're there to feel good, to laugh, to like get that. So I'm like, if we can, make the medicine go down a little easier, we're going to teach you how to send a good co-parenting text, but we're also going to show you Michael Scott, The Office joke about, the craziness of it all. So
Right.
I think it's like a balance of just trying to normalize it, like you said, and make people feel less alone. That's another thing we started doing a couple months ago. We do these, and I got it borrowed it from my friend Rachel Sobel. She's Wine and Cheese Its on Instagram, and she would do these confessions, and like there'd be 300 responses of people just pouring their heart out, saying things that they would never tell anybody because they were anonymous. And I was like, oh, that would be a good idea for a divorce. So
Mhm.
we're getting hundreds of responses of people, a lot of times venting, but
Right.
like I would get messages back saying, oh my God, I'm going through that too, or yes, I totally understand. And maybe they couldn't articulate it. So give people an opportunity to feel seen, to feel heard, to see their message out in the world. Um, I mean, I'm always been like an empathetic person, maybe to a fault in some ways. So to be able to apply it to a community that I know needs it,
Yeah.
it's really gratifying for me. And I was like, hey, let's turn it into a business, turn it into a why not? We only live once. Let's have a mission and do something that can help a lot of people.
I love that, honestly. And we're very aligned on that mission. And like I said before, there's never enough of us. There are so many people, as you said, the numbers are super alarming. In America alone, it's 50% of divorces happen. And that's not even including the separation. As we know,
Hmm.
there's a lot of people who are not married, but with children and assets and so forth, who have to go through that same breakup,
Hmm.
the emotional side, the financial side, the children. So, that it's a lot. And,
Yeah.
being able and people resonate with different types of people and different types of things. And I think comedy is fantastic, because not to undermine how hard it is, but to show that actually, yeah, there is some crazy, funny aspects of
Oh
what you're
yeah.
facing, and you got to laugh at it. You just have to
Absolutely.
laugh.
Yeah.
I used to say, I was like, am I being spunked, or like, is there like some video camera
Yeah.
around?
Oh, I've had many. I mean, I've had a story when I was dating, and it was a first date, so I'd never even met this woman. So I'm wondering what she's going to look like, and I'm walking to the restaurant bar, and outside I just see the profile of my ex's head with somebody else, and I'm like, I just stopped dead in my tracks. I'm like, well, I can't just walk in there. That's insane on so many levels. Not only do I don't even know who the date I'm going to meet is. So it was funny. It was right outside like a fire station. And I was joking around with the guys, telling them, what would you guys do? And they're like, oh, don't go in there, man. Just text her and say, we got to go somewhere else. So, right. Finding like the moments of laughter in it, I think are important, because
And
if
crazy
not,
moments.
if you
Mhm.
don't laugh, you will cry a
You're
lot. So
100%. I agree. I agree. And it's okay to do both, but
yeah.
it's really nice to laugh. And there is something about it. And that's the thing. You have a community, and now you're also providing a community of a safe place to also laugh about it, right? It's okay. So,
Yeah.
which is great.
And what you said before too is like I would meet these divorced dads and tell them like, oh, there's this podcast you should listen to. And they're like, we take for granted being kind of plugged into the
Mhm.
industry, or even just plugged into wanting to do some self work.
Mhm.
People have no idea who that a podcast exists, that Instagram has helpful experts, that Split.fyi exists. So if we
Right.
can raise that awareness, we take for granted that we might know who Michelle Dempsey is, and she creates this incredible content, but
Right.
probably 95 out of 100 people have never really heard of that. So if you can introduce somebody to one
Exactly.
piece of content, can really like change somebody's life.
So true. It is 100%. And we really try to foster that actually and within our community, because I mean, even podcasts that are outside of the divorce, that I can say, well, you know what? Even what they're talking to and what they're speaking to, especially when it comes to health and self-care and because we forget that when we're going through something like
Hmm.
this, and how important it is. So that's a whole nother conversation
Yeah.
to
All
do. But
these new tools that you now have to learn. One of my favorite books ever is Never Split the Difference by Chris Voss, who was a FBI hostage negotiator. And I think he was divorced, but like I now use when I'm sending texts to my co-parent, and she's probably not listening, but she's very savvy. So I think she does them to me too. But just brilliant ways to, call it negotiation. A lot of times just empathize with what your partner, even if it's adversarial, is going through, because just sending that text can set off all of a sudden just like a spiral of like, well, why'd you say that? And now it's in your head. So if you can have these tools that I'll literally copy paste from my phone,
yeah,
would it be a problem if you grab the kids after school today because of this? Whereas before, and so Chris Voss would say, go for the no. He's like, would it be a problem if you could pick up the kids? And they'd
right.
be like, oh no. Whereas before it would be like, hey, can you get the kids after school today? And then it's like, well, it's your day. Why aren't you doing
Right.
it?
And
So
then it goes into a whole conversation around that.
exactly. And then all of a sudden you're talking about, 3 years ago. So like having these tools that you can use, because also you're flooded with cortisol and emotion. So you need to be prepared for a lot of the interactions that you're going to have.
Well, and what you're exactly, I say this a lot too. It's, what do you want to get out of the conversation? Like, what do you want to get out of it? Right. Do you want, what you want to get out of it is that she picks up the kids after school. So it's like, so then design that conversation so it just leads to that answer to that. Don't
Right.
go into the weeds. Right. And so it's exactly the same thing. And it always is that being kind of, friendly about it and really grateful. And even
Yeah.
if you don't like them, even if, you're angry with them, it doesn't matter. It's just like, what do you want in the end of it?
Exactly. Even if you're faking it a little, I know what you're thinking inside, but if you said, hey, I know this is going to be a total pain in the butt for you, and you've been so helpful the past 3 days, but would it be a problem? Just the way you're leading that off with
Exactly.
makes the person, even if it's your ex who you don't have a good relationship with, at least say, all right, I can do that. Whereas, it's so easy to fumble these things because, again, divorce is extremely emotional. Nobody understands that except the person going through it. Everybody can talk about what you should do and should say, but you're the only one that has these emotions. So you need to kind of study, you need to put in the work as to how you're going to figure this out when your brain actually is functional.
That's such great advice, honestly. And I love what you also said. And the book is amazing. I love that book. And what I add to that also is that you also have to get into that mindset. It's not about winning, and it's not about like I get what I want, and all of that. And so you're really just saying we're trying to make it this cohesive, coexisting existence around our children moving
Mhm.
forward. So let's just try to help each other out. And if you have that in your brain, you don't have to articulate it to your ex, but if you have that, it's like, okay, how can we just help each other out? And also really, highlight the fact that they do help,
Yeah.
even if they don't, just something that they do
Right.
that's right, try to highlight that. So
Oh
it
yeah,
feel good,
we
massage.
all want to we all want to feel good about ourselves. We all want words of affirmation, even your ex who can't stand you, or your ex that you can't stand. And I know some people hearing this too are going to be like, well, yeah, Lila, that sounds nice, but he doesn't want to do any of this. He's not listening to, this show. He's not following your Instagram. So I have a lot of empathy for people that are like really just banging their heads against the wall, but they still could benefit from like figuring out how to disengage and not like throw themselves into it, because unfortunately they are in a much more complicated, messy situation with the ex that doesn't want to participate. So it makes it a lot harder, but like you still can control some of it.
You can control a little bit of the narrative in the sense that there are little tweaks that you can use that, like I said, I think part of it is making them feel validated because everybody wants to, right? And
Hmm.
just stroking their ego a little bit, right?
Hmm.
As much as you can without feeling like you want to vomit. So,
Right.
it's that kind of, okay, or is it just one or the other, So that I think is a mindset that they can go into. And I think it's, great advice what you said. I love it. So I know we're going to wrap up, but I want to really highlight a little bit on WTF and what it provides for people. I have a little understanding, but I would love you to explain it and how people can find you. I already told them to follow your Instagram, and I'll put it in the show notes because it's so fun. It's so great. And yeah, just do your thing and tell everyone about a WTF divorce.
Well, thank you. And before I even talk about that, Split.fyi, I was just looking at the site. It's incredible. I'm envious of how much great content there is and how it's easy to navigate, because I think that's the other thing. It's like you need somebody you don't know what you don't know. So, it's very helpful. But at
Thank you.
WTF Divorce, we do try to, we keep it light, but, there's so many incredible experts out there that we have a directory where you can connect with one, message them, set up a call with them. On our Instagram, we do these confessions where you can share whatever you're going through and people will give you feedback. We have a podcast, WTF Divorce, that are short clips, usually keep it like 5 minutes or less, where it's like one topic, because people might not want to listen to me for 40 minutes, but they might want to listen to somebody say, what do you do if your co-parent forgets to pick up their kid from school, something
Right.
like that. That's
Right.
like a really tactical thing. So,
Right.
we're always experimenting. We're trying new things, just ways to connect with people and help them feel heard. And yeah, it's been really gratifying for me to be able to, like, you get those messages. I'm sure you feel the same way from people that say, because you never know if like it's really resonating with people, especially on social. It's kind of be one-sided. But just today I get messages like, you have no idea how much your page means to me. It helps me feel less alone. And like, it really does make it feel all worthwhile, because we know, having gone through it, how painful it can be. So this idea that we can give back, I think is such a great thing.
So with that, I would love to tell you, which I don't normally do because I'm not coaching you for by all means, but with that, I would love you to get a journal, of actually written one. Okay. It doesn't have to look like this in pink. All right. But I write down all of those because I get so many text messages or DMs or something on the website or an email or this. They come from all these different places. And so you're like, you love it in the moment, but then you forget it. But
Yeah,
actually, I jot it all down. Honestly, I jot it all down in here.
great idea.
And then I look back and I'm like, you know what? This is what we're doing, because you know that, I mean, we're business owners. And so it's not just, yes, we're supporting people through it, but we're also business owners. So doing that, and I think anybody should do that. I think even people who are going through divorce, it's like you get all these compliments and you just don't even listen to them, but
Yeah.
just write it down. Later on, when you're ready for it, you look at it and you're like, oh yeah, it's a reminder.
I'm 100% doing that, because like you said, when you're running these, websites, businesses, Instagrams, even, you think about just how hard it is, and this got screwed up and you got hacked and this page is broken and all these things, but you forget that, like, that one person listening, if you can you know change the way they feel about something, that's an incredible impact you can have on somebody's life.
Yeah. So I expect to see a notebook in your hands next time we talk.
Got it here. Got it right here. I'm already
Right on.
yes. I think that's a good idea though. Taking it from like the phone, which I screenshot. I got 8 billion screenshots that I never look at. Put
Right.
them in like a dedicated space that's like, here's your
Yeah.
feel good
Yeah, it's your feel good moment. That's what I call the book. It's my
nice.
feel good. It's my love. So anyway, with that, thank you for your time. This was amazing conversation. I love what you're doing. Everybody needs to go follow WTF Divorce. It's great. And check out their website. And Rob, you're amazing. And we'll have another conversation, I'm sure, soon. Thank you.
Yes. Thank you so much, Lila. This was fun.